Welcome to the Royal Fumblers. We are discussing the Fantasy 101 package thing that we do sometimes as of once before. This will be the second one. So you can learn all that you would ever want to learn about 101 or fantasy or something like that. Now, guys, what we're going to talk about right now are different types of leagues. We're going to talk about variations of leagues from a redraft league to keeper leagues to dynasty leagues to PPR versus half PPR versus no PPR, or standard as what some people like to call it. We're talking about variations of players that people would like to put, like defenses, team quarterbacks, regular quarterbacks, 2 quarterback leagues, that whole thing. We're going to go down a lot of the basics, and then we're going to give you some options for getting started on one of your own leagues. All right. Right now I got Drewski, that's me. We got Statty McStatterson over here, and we've got Danny the Mouth. Guys, let's start out. Tell me about the basic, what you're gonna see most of the time, 10-team PPR league. What does that mean?
Well, most of them are the PPR are going to be redraft leagues, and that means every year, if that league's kept around, you're going to redraft a whole new team. You know, it's one of those things you don't keep any of your players. And to me, I love those just because I draft extremely well, as you can see. But it's one of those things, you know, that's the most common fantasy football league out there. You have to have a really good strategy. Good running backs that are really capable of catching the ball are a premium in those leagues. And making sure slot receivers that are going to get, you know, anywhere from 7 to 12 receptions in a game, worth their weight in gold.
I mean, PPR, for those that don't know, is a points per reception, which means your guy, you know, most standard leagues, most regular leagues, your guy's going to get 1 point for every 10 yards they rush, or 1 point for every 10 yards they receive. They will also get a point for every reception they catch, which makes receiving running backs, like Danny was saying, so much more valuable because you get the rushing aspect, plus you get the passing down work, receiving yards. So it's huge. PPR leagues, a lot of people like doing PPR leagues because it makes the wide receivers more valuable in those type of leagues, which brings them closer in value to running backs. So in a, like I said, the standard redraft, those are the things, you're going to get, you know, you find out your draft choice at the right before the draft or an hour before the draft, however you guys set it up in your league, and you're not going to keep the same players. You're going to just redraft a new team every year, just like Danny said. But yeah, they're very fun leagues. I like PPR. PPR is one of my favorite leagues, actually.
Half PPR would be a half a point per reception, correct? Which would mean that it's somewhere between the two. Somewhere between winning a Derrick Henry or an Austin Eckler. Now, the other part of that is the fact that we said 10-team. 10-team is a sort of a baseline amount of teams that you're going to have. Actually, one of the lower levels. Usually, most leagues are going to be 10 or 12. Sometimes 10 or 12 teams. It's the amount of teams, the amount of people that are in the league that are playing against each other. I've never seen it below 8. But I've seen teams with 14. I've seen 16 teams. I've even seen an 18-team league before. I've actually seen one 20-team league, which was a monster. I played on one of those last year, and it was ugly to watch. It was not fun. But all of these leagues have different, you know, changing one of these small variables can change your entire league, entire way of playing that league. Danny, what would you do different, say, in a 10-team league versus a 20-team league?
Well, in a 10-team league, I would go after, you know, depending on where I'm drafting. If I'm drafting in the top 5, you know, I would consider going after a top-tier running back, you know, Barkley, Kamara, Cook, CMC. You know, with a 10-team league, you know, if I'm drafting early, I'm going to consider going after the top tier running backs because they ain't going to be around when you know, come back around. So CMC, Cook, Kamara, Barkley. But if I'm drafting lower, I'm going to go something completely different. I'm going to go ahead and pick up a top tier quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or even consider taking Travis Kelce or George Kittle, because you need to steal them there. And then in your second round, you're going to have a pick almost immediately. Then you can go after another running back. Now, 20 team, that is a mess. You pretty much have to go whoever's going to give you the most points. And to be honest with you, that position will be quarterback. It's going to be taking Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers if he gets to play. And the reason is those guys are going to average you over 20 points a week and occasionally get you up to as high as 40 or 50, depending on how they play that week. And you need that, because in the first round, yeah, everyone's going to be taking running backs, but running backs typically, unless it's CMC, they're not going to get you over 20 points a week typically. Yeah,
Well,
your
and if you draft
receiver.
number 1 and get a CMC, you're not getting another pick until pick 40. So that's where it gets really weird.
So you have to make sure whoever you get with that first pick in a 20-team league is going to be worth their weight in gold, because it's going to be a very long time before you get another draft pick, and you're going to have a lot of players on your roster in every single team that are going to get you 0 or maybe 5 at the most, just because there's so many teams there. You might have the best quarterback, but I can promise you, if you have any, a top tier position after that, you're lucky.
All right. So we've talked about the PPR versus the half PPR versus the standard. We've talked about the amount of the team differential. Now let's talk about the adjustments based on position. Some leagues have what they call a super flex, and some teams, some have quarterback, 2 quarterback leagues. I've seen 3 running back leagues. I've seen 3 wide receiver leagues without a flex. Let's talk about some of these positions real quick and how they can change a little bit on how things are drafted. Let's start out with the 2 quarterback league. How does that change up on your draft projections?
Oh,
Well,
huge. I mean, you got to go. If you're in a 2 quarterback league, you need to draft 2 really, really good quarterbacks and go after them early, because the thing is, you're talking about 60 points a week between these 2. What other position is going to get you 60 points between 2 players? You're not consistently. Now, you might say, well, you can get that out of a wide receiver, or you can get that out of your running backs. Well, guess what? That's not consistent. Quarterbacks are consistent, especially when you get the top tier ones, and you have to go heavy on that. Even in a super flex. In a super flex, you can play any offensive position in that super flex spot, but you are better to play a quarterback there, because a quarterback is going to be more consistent as far as getting the points there in that slot.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, listen, if you're doing a super flex league, quarterbacks have way more value. If you're looking at just a regular, standard, whatever, your higher positions, running backs, wide receivers are all going to be valued a little higher. The super flex, which is what a lot of people like to do now, puts more position value on the quarterback, which is similar to the real NFL. Like in the real NFL, in reality, you have to have that core base of a quarterback, or else your team's just not going to be any good. So it makes it, a lot of people like doing it because it actually makes it more realistic. And that's what, let's face it, if you're playing fantasy, you want to try to get as real to real football as you can. So in a super flex, Patrick Mahomes, you're looking at the number 1 or number 2 pick, where he's not going to be that in a regular or a PPR standard, whatever you want to call it, whatever kind of league you're in. Superflex leagues, they have so much more value. Now, personally, I'm a guy that whether I draft in regular or Superflex, I will pick up a quarterback, but I want to get that one guy, I want to get good positional value, but I usually go like one quarterback and then a position value and wait a couple rounds, because everybody's going to try to get those quarterbacks. But I want to get my one guy that is your go-to, and then I'm going to pick up some guys to fill in a little bit later. That's just my strategy. I like to get positional value because a lot of people do. They run for quarterbacks in the superflex, which is what you're supposed to do. I get it. I like to kind of when they're doing that, I like to zig a little bit, get some guys that are going a little bit later. You can probably get Saquon in your 8th or 9th pick, possibly. I might go that way and then pick up a quarterback in the next round, going back around that way. Really, the biggest
no. Whoa.
Whoa, hold on. Let me finish talking. You had enough time to talk. But listen, you got to stay fluid. Drafts, you have to stay fluid, whether it's 2 quarterback, whether it's whatever, you have to stay fluid. You take what is given to you you can't go into going, I've got to pick this guy. I've got to have this guy. If somebody falls to you that you don't expect, you can, but I say be fluid. Go into it with a plan. Any draft, go into it with a plan, but be ready to deviate if somebody falls to you that you didn't expect to be there.
Yeah, I like it when people like to pick guys that are way in the, they're like, oh yeah, sure. I want Najee Harris, so I'm going to pick him first overall. That's at this point to me, I'm like, you just don't do it because I love it when someone's overpicking a guy like Najee Harris because I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm going to get the guy that I want. I'm more likely to get these guys that otherwise wouldn't have a chance at. So I'm going to go ahead and say that there's a rule of supply and demand. All right. And the demand goes up when you have a 2 quarterback league, the demand for quarterbacks goes up. When you have a 3 wide receiver league, the demand for wide receivers goes up because you need to keep the guys playing. When you have a 3 running back league, the demand goes up as well. 2 tight end league, I've seen that. The demand goes up. And all of a sudden, you need to draft these guys earlier and more of them than you would have otherwise. You have to adjust your ADP. ADP meaning average draft projection, right? All your stuff changes. Your quarterbacks in a 2 quarterback league go higher because their demand is so much higher.
Sure.
Because the value is higher.
It's one of those, I'm going to say this, there's been a few years where I've had the first overall pick in a lot of leagues or I've drafted high, and I typically don't go after whoever is expected to be number 1. And the case in point of that is, I remember a few years ago, I had taken Todd Gurley in my first round draft pick. And everyone was like, you're on drugs. And I lost the championship just because of poor commissioning, playing the championship week 17. Then the following year, I drafted Saquon Barkley, someone I thought really high of, a rookie in my first round. And everyone's like, you're on drugs. Well, guess what? I won the championship. The trophy's sitting over here. The following year, everyone's like, well, you got to take Zeke. You got to do this. No, I took CMC and I won this trophy. It's one of those things you
and
have
the following year you took Ezekiel Elliott.
But the thing is, it's one of those things, Zeke didn't do well for me. He really didn't. But guess what? The trophy's still here because I won back-to-back years. And it's one of those things. You got to draft well, but you also have to know when you need to upgrade your team to make it further. Because both years I won this, I made trades for quarterbacks. And both times, trophy's here.
Right on. So we've talked about team differential. We've talked about positional differential. Let's talk about a couple more of those weird positions that we can sometimes have. There is the team quarterback versus a specific quarterback. The team quarterback would be when you get to pick the team's quarterback for the entire year. So it wouldn't just be Kansas City Chiefs, which a couple of years ago, it wouldn't just be Patrick Mahomes, who a couple of years ago got injured for a couple of games and the quarterback was still viable as a backup. You'd get them even when Patrick Mahomes wasn't there. You get to play that. That's a team quarterback. There is the punter position. The punter position is an absurd. It's an absurd position, but it's kind of, guys, you have to admit, it's actually kind of fun.
No,
it was fun
fun
until you get fucked.
I mean, and listen, Danny lost 2 I've
never seen someone lose 2 games because of a punter before.
It was the wildest thing ever. It just brings another element to it. A lot of people don't like it. We even had some guys when we created the league and we said, hey, we're gonna have punters. A lot of people were against it. They didn't like it. But you know what? it brought a different element to it. Whatever element you want to bring to it to kind of spice it up, I don't see a problem with, as long as you're the commissioner and you make it apparent to everybody that you're adding this into your league. Everybody knows going into it. So, but listen, we did it last year. We'd never done one before, but I mean, Andrew had, but we'd never done a punter in there. I've never done it, so it was new to me. But it was something that was just brought a different element to it. You just adjust.
I mean, I really did enjoy it, even though I got screwed by ESPN. But it's one of those things. I mean, you got to come out of your comfort zone if you really want to enjoy it. And adding punters for the first time was really fun. Another league
you do it again?
Yeah, I would definitely do it again.
Sure.
Another league that I did this last year, and I won that league, you drafted a team defense, but you also had a defensive player that you could pick. And that was something new to me, and I was very fortunate. I was smart enough to get, guys that were really high up on the sack charts, because that helped out a lot.
Now, and I've never done an IVP league where you get an individual player. So, Danny, maybe you can help me to understand it, but you can choose any defensive position, whether that would be on the line, a secondary, and each one has different values of it. But
then see, what I found was, and you're right, you can pick a lineman, you can pick a linebacker, you can take someone from the secondary, any team, any defensive player, and what I found out was guys that get sacks get more points in tackles. So to me, I stayed more towards the linebackers and the defensive ends, but linebackers were gold. They get a lot of tackles. They're in on tackles on the running back. They're in on tackles on tight ends, wide receivers. Where the corners, you kind of, they're not picking up too much value. But if those guys get interceptions or touchdowns, it is huge, but that is a boom or bust position there. And even with defensive linemen, you're going to get some tackles, but you're going to get more out of the linebacker position. And you want to pick linebackers that are on really good defenses that have very bad offenses. I can't remember who I had. I had a linebacker from the Chicago Bears last year, and that dude was gold.
Interesting.
All right.
Another thing, if you don't, I'll just, this is something I've never done, but it's real quick. It is the tight end premium leagues where your tight end will get, like, say in a regular PPR, you get 1 point per reception. In a tight end premium league, your tight ends will get 1.5 points per reception.
Never trade Travis Kelce.
Never trade Travis Kelce. But it does put an emphasis more on the tight end position. Where I've seen some leagues are trying to, in some instances, get rid of the tight end position, because, like, instead of having a tight end position, they're doing like another flex where you can put like a wide receiver tight end combo. You don't have to do tight end. So I
disagree with those leagues, and here's the reason why. Tight ends are tight ends. And if you are removing the tight end position to put a second flex in, you are saying you don't believe in tight ends, or you're not going to be able to draft Kelce, Kittle, or Waller, or even Pitts now. And you're just looking for a cheap way to get points instead of having to actually use your brain power to put a team together.
I've actually seen a running back tight end combo, and that was kind of interesting. Because I would still draft Travis Kelce and put him in a running back spot. I think he'd be amazing there. So I don't like it with the wide receiver, just because I don't know. There's too many wide receivers already in this world. Like, I'm sick of them.
Wide receivers' lives matter.
Now,
let's get Watt out of here. All right. So finish it out. We talked about the positions. We talked about the differences. Ultimately, you got to pick the league that's right for you. Ask questions. Point differentials matter. Having a half PPR versus a full PPR league is a big difference. But also look at those little bylaws on Yahoo or ESPN or NFL or wherever it is that you're doing your draft, look at the differences in how they're adjusting the way the points are scored. I'm telling you right now that it can be the difference between winning or losing a league. If they have a punter, if somehow you see a punter getting 37 points in a game, and Christian McCaffrey is getting 12, you need to adjust something that's going on with that league. Somebody did something wrong. Not to say I've ever made a mistake on point adjustment in my leagues before, but if I had, I would know that I would alter it very, very quickly and make sure that the league knew about it. Anyway, keep an eye on that kind of stuff.
Isn't that the league you won the championship after making the adjustment? Just saying.
I
don't know what you're talking about. It's not like I played the same guy 4 weeks in a row.
Well, here's the thing. If you're starting a league or you're a league manager, you're human. You can make mistakes. It is the responsibility of everybody in the league you got to look at the rules, understand the rules. That way, if you see something that is out of place, you can let the manager know and keep an eye on those kind of things. So know your rules, know how to play the game, because like, again, it could be something crazy you don't know about. Like, if you don't know about punters, you don't know about those things, you read up on it, find out so that you can effectively be a good manager in that league.
Go ahead.
Tell your manager that you're playing the same guy 4 times in a row.
I never tell them. Yeah, no. The trick is, if you're the commissioner, and this is the best part, if you're the commissioner of the league, you make the rules and just tell everybody, I am the game. And that's what you do. There is no question about what's going on. You already have their money. F them, you're done. I'm just kidding. All right. Or am I? Guys, all jokes aside, let's talk about, to finish off this discussion, let's talk about theme leagues and a few of our favorites, just to finish off on a happy note. All right.
My league, the RFL, the Royal Fumble League. It is a theme league where we use the WWE, WCW. Teams are named after some of our favorites. Like, my team was called The Game, Triple H. There you go. And, we have a belt for a championship trophy that gets passed around every year. The divisions are named after the shows, Raw, SmackDown. We're actually expanding it. It is a very entertaining league. Last year, we didn't get a lot of trash talking, but there's plans to move that up.
We got a little bit from some of the players, but I think it's going to get taken up another level. I've seen South Park leagues. That's been one of my favorites, where it's a South Park theme league. And I'm just saying,
I want to play.
I did.
Here's the thing. You can do whatever themed league you want to. Only thing this is what gets me is, if it's a theme league and going into it, just run with it, enjoy it, have fun. Listen, when Danny did the Royal Fumble League and everybody was picking wrestler names and things like that, a lot of people, there were some people who were like, I'm not a big wrestling fan, I don't know if I want to do it. But then they slowly started getting into it and they enjoyed it, and it's a lot of fun. So don't be a Debbie Downer and bring everybody in the league down by not changing your name or not going with the theme.
Yeah, I mean,
going into it.
Bring the big league energy and run with it. Bring the big league. And here's the thing: if you're a commissioner and people are like, I'm not sure, the more fun you have with it, the more fun everybody else does.
Like, just because you've always used the name "Show Me Your TDs" because you're a 24-year-old virgin doesn't mean you can't get into the theme. Yes, I took a shot at Kurt there. I took a shot at Kurt. I hope Kurt sees this.
Listen, if you're doing a Star Wars theme, pick a Star Wars name. Just have some fun with it, man. Just do whatever league you want to do.
Your Marvel, do a Stan league, like, that's fantastic. It's a great idea for a league.
Sure.
As long as it's run efficiently. I
still have the trophy.
I still haven't gotten mine.
Danny, you want to?
Danny, tell me about what's the difference between a keeper league and a dynasty league and just a standard league? What's up with that?
All right, so we'll start with standard because I hate that league the most and I don't want to spend much time on it. A standard league is where you don't get any points for reception. The name
What I
came
meant to say was a
standard.
redraft. I apologize. Not
A
a standard.
regular, a redraft. Yeah.
Okay.
I know what you're saying, but yeah, you use the term
All right.
standard.
I love all three, and the reason I love all three is I know how to draft. So with a redraft league, every single year your roster is cleared, you start fresh, you go in the draft, you make your new team. Keeper league, at first I was like, man, I hope I like this, and come to find out I love it because this is the trophy for the 2 years I've played in a keeper league. And with a keeper league, you start your very first year drafting your players, and you're allowed to keep a certain number for up to so many years. So in our league, we're allowed to keep 3 players for up to 3 years. And then after the 3rd year, we need to trade them off or they'll re-enter the draft. So it's very important, to make sure you got some good keepers. And you have to realize when guys' value starts dropping, they might not be a keeper anymore. So you need to make moves to try to reinforce your roster for the following season. And, it's just like this last year, I had, some pretty good keepers. And then I had a couple injuries, and then I made some trades. And like last year, I traded for Saquon Barkley, knowing he was going to be out for the whole year with the intent of having him for the following year to strengthen up my team and make a run for 3 straight championships, which is a very good possibility now. Dynasty League is where you get to keep your entire roster for so long. And then when you go into the draft the following year, you're drafting the rookies that are incoming or anyone that's left over in the free agency market. So that's how you would build your team. And then, you have to be careful because you're going to have certain guys like, man, their value is going down. I need to make trades. And you have to remember in keeper and dynasty, trading draft picks is huge. So even if you had a bad season, you might have a couple of key players. You could start making trades for draft picks, move up. It's like playing GM for a real NFL team. You're building for the future.
Now, and I will say this: in keeper leagues, there's different types of keeper leagues. We play in a keeper league where I wanted to have dynasty aspects where you can trade draft picks. Some places, keeper leagues, you can't trade draft picks, but they do also do a thing where wherever you drafted that keeper, like, and this is just a different element, but like say you drafted Cam Akers in the 11th round, you might want to keep him over somebody higher value because that means you don't pick one in the 11th round. So you might want to keep a lower value and still draft somebody else. So there's different aspects to do keeper leagues, and keeper leagues, some places they only do 1, 2. We just happen to do 3, and not all of them do draft pick trading. But in the dynasty aspect, you do have draft pick trading. You do have future draft pick trading as well. And the team that you have, that's what you have. So you have to make it work. It's a different type of league setup. You don't get to start scratch. You got your team. This is it. And Danny is correct. You only, when you do a draft, you do a draft every year, but it's only the rookies. So in that part of it, draft picks, like getting a first round draft pick, is more valuable, where you have to trade up. You might find guys who are like, man, my team is kind of tanking. I'm going to trade away some of my valuable guys to get draft picks. And it's more like real NFL stuff.
Tell me a little bit about how the waiver wire is handled on a dynasty setup.
Dynasty, first of all, in a dynasty, usually you have a roster of like 20 players or so. So if there is a waiver wire, you're not going to use the waiver wire all that much because there's not really anybody on there. Occasionally you might get somebody who's blown up, like say
James Robinson.
What was that guy? Well, yeah. Well, James Robinson probably got drafted, but like
you
say
because he went undrafted in the
real thing. There were some guys I knew that drafted him, like say the 4th round of their rookie draft, just to have him on there. You don't have to necessarily play him, and you can maybe cut him if you wanted to. But there's guys like like what was it, the Philadelphia wide receiver Fulgerson? Probably not a lot of people had him, if that was his name, or Fulgham or whatever it is. And he went off. Yes. Yeah, and,
Well-
and you may have been able to grab him off the waiver wire, but it's few and far between on a waiver wire in a dynasty type league.
Well, you have to remember, like last year, the Chargers came out and said, "Hey, Tyrod Taylor is the starting quarterback." Then, depending on the size of your league, some guys might have drafted Tyrod and had him on their roster to play, and then all of a sudden, week 2, he's injured. The backup is Herbert, and no one's going to pick up a backup quarterback in the draft. They're going to go ahead and leave him on the wire. So eventually you would have to go down there and pick up guys like that to cover injuries or replacements.
Gotcha.
You're going to the bottom of the barrel sometimes, though. Like when it comes to waiver in the dynasty.
All right. What about with that, guys? It's been fun chatting with you. We're gonna move on to the next one and come back to us for more fantasy relevant information when you're learning how to play your game. This is
All right,
David
my
Mouth,
teammate for South Park.
Drewski, and Statty McStatterson signing out. See you next time.